Welcome back.
What's up, Coach?
How you doing?
Good.
Transfer portal's open. Wildness has begun. More wildness than I even thought. And we're gonna have
portal, college football playoff.
Oh yeah, we'll have no better guest to talk to it than former Division I coach Marty Fine, who just had a tremendous amount of success at Bryan College. Obviously, he coached for a few years after that as well as a head coach. And many years before, a staple for many years in the Northeast. A guy that has accomplished a ton of things at Bryant University, really basically launched it into the success where it is today. And where it's now playing in the CAA. And so he's the guy that really took them to a whole new heights and a whole new levels. Without further ado, let's bring in Coach and get this party started here.
Good morning, man.
That is a good-looking man right there.
The check is in the mail, Derek.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it. Listen, one thing I never worried about when working with Coach, I know I was getting paid. Coach, it's good to see you. I really appreciate you coming on and talking some ball with us this morning. Thanks.
My pleasure. David, you won't remember, but I met you when I was coaching at Indiana.
Yes.
I called the plays for Antoine Randall in that group 97 to 2001 before I went to Iowa State with Seneca Wallace.
Yes.
So, we've been doing this a long time. We've been through a lot of recruiting stuff over the years, but nothing is what it is today. It has changed. The starting quarterback at Ohio State goes 11-1 and decides to leave.
I couldn't believe that.
I don't know who gave him that guidance, but where are you going to go that's bigger? What could you be looking for that's different than playing in their stadium every other weekend? I mean,
Washington State's quarterback Cam Ward goes into transfer portal. Oklahoma's quarterback goes into transfer portal.
The Washington State quarterback is in a different circumstance because of what happened around him.
Okay.
Right. I can understand that. He wants to go play in the power league. I can understand him. Because the circumstance he went there for changed beyond his control. But you go to Oklahoma and play for 2 years, where are you going to go that's bigger than Oklahoma? I played against Oklahoma and got run out of the yard. They scored 60. And so I've been in all these stadiums. I coached against Florida State. I coached against Oklahoma. I coached against Ohio State a whole bunch of times in Michigan. Those schools are the top of the top. Those are the blue bloods. That's the cream of what our profession is. To think you're going to go to Ohio State, go 11-1, and then go somewhere else that's better? Who gave him that guidance? It's impossible.
My crazy thing, too, is, right, you look at the history of it, right, and it was always Ohio State quarterbacks aren't very good when they get to the NFL, right? So now you have Ryan Day come in, right, just produces C.J. Stroud, who's going off in the NFL, and now you have that guidance right here, and you go 11-1, and you're gone.
Derek, I coached at 4 colleges. I was the winningest coach ever at 3 of them, and none of them have replicated what I did. Well, that's not true. Sonoma State did with Tim Walsh. But I was involved with changing all those programs. And the thing that people lose track of is it doesn't matter what happened to the Kirk Herbstreit when he played or, any of those guys that didn't make it in the NFL. If you're good enough, you'll make it. And if you're not, you won't. And it doesn't matter where you go.
Right.
There isn't better development. There isn't better competition than playing at Ohio State.
So what is the reason? Why are they moving around so much? I mean,
it's like a lot of things, David. It becomes the soup du jour. It's the thing to do.
Yep.
Somebody's telling him in the ear, we could get you more short-term money if we go in the portal. But only 33% of the kids that even went in the portal over the last 2 years ended up at a bigger, better place. 67% of the kids that went in didn't. So, there's an allure. It's the shiny new object, but it doesn't mean it's worth gold.
It's the new trend. It's the new trend. It's the new toy that's on the shelf. It's the new hip thing to do, right? It's
the other thing that it is, Derek, is and I hate to say this out loud, but there's agents. There's people representing these kids.
Yes, of course.
And they're getting a cut.
Of course.
If you sit and wait, or if they think, if I can put that kid in the portal and make a little bit more money, I make a little bit more money. It's selfish. And when you're 19 years old, you're not thinking about that. When you've never had any money, that's not how your brain is programmed to think.
Right.
I'll tell you one quick story. I'm a storyteller. You know,
mom and dad don't know any different either, right?
No,
so now the people they're just getting taken just like the kid.
I'm coaching at Iowa State, and it's 2002 maybe, and we got Seneca Wallace at quarterback. We got a real good coaching staff. I'm working for Dan McCarney, who's a great guy. And we lose to Florida State in the opener, and if they had replay, we'd have won the game. We hit the pylon in the fourth quarter with Seneca with the ball, and they call it short by a foot. But that's okay. We lose 36-31 in the Eddie Robinson Classic. The Arrowhead Stadium is sold out. It's a great opener. We win 6 in a row. We beat Missouri, Kansas, Troy State, who was probably the best of all the teams we played with, OCU Manura and Ware. And I mean, they were a great front, and I'm trying to block them. And we played, and we beat the teams that were really pretty good. We go, and I guess we're 5-1, and we're ranked. And Iowa State doesn't get ranked very often. And we have Nebraska at home, and they hadn't beaten Nebraska since '77. That's a long time in a series where you play every year. Oof. And Frank Solich is the coach at Nebraska, and they're pretty good. They go on and win 9 games that year. You know, Nebraska hasn't been the same since they let go Frank. I mean, he understood.
Yeah, no, absolutely not even close.
But we beat them, and we don't beat them just a little bit. We handle them. We run the ball for, I don't know, $180, and we played great. And we're at home, and there's 60,000 people. And after the game, I'm on the sideline, and I run on the field because I know the Nebraska guys. When I was at Indiana, we used to do a lot of things together because we ran similar offenses and weren't in the same league. Well, now I'm in their league. We play them. I know those guys. You know, before the game, you nod to them and you're polite to them. But after the game, you wish them well. And so I'm jogging across the field, and all of a sudden there's this rumbling noise, like nothing I'd heard very often in my career. I'd heard it once before in the Meadowlands, actually, in an Army-Navy game. But other than that, I get halfway across the field, and it's really loud in the stadium. And I turn around, and there's 60,000 people jumping fences and running onto the field. And I think, I'm going to get murdered out here. So I turn around, and I decide I'll call those guys tomorrow, and I start trying to get off the field.
Business decision.
I got 2 cops with me, no question. And one of my buddies, the offense coordinator, Steve Brickey's son, got knocked down. I pick him up, I use his feet, and I get us off the field. The cop is helping me. And there, to get to the locker room where the kids were going to go, you had to go up next to the building and then in. And they had like a metal railing to keep the fans away from where the players had to go in the locker room. And all the people are high-fiving the cop saying, Coach, fine, just get in the building. And I'm, dapping people up and having a heck of a time. And, here's a kid from Brooklyn with 60,000 Iowa people throwing corn at you.
Yeah.
And I get to one little group, and these people are saying awful, horrible things at me, swearing, yelling, and wearing Iowa State stuff. And I kind of jog past them, and I think, what's wrong with those people? And I start to go back, and the 2 cops grab me. No, don't go back. He said, we got no control over this crowd. I said, no. I said, I'm going to go check. I mean, there's got to be something. I'm not used to people speaking to me this way, and I don't know what I did.
Right.
So I go back. I said, what's the matter with you? And it was the family of the backup tailback. And they were sure that their kid wasn't going to go play in the league and change their family's future because I didn't put him in the game. The starting tailback got hot. We're beating Nebraska. I'm not real worried about some kids standing behind me.
Yes.
We're doing everything we can to win the game because the game is the issue, not any one individual person. It's the beauty of football. And I called them. I had this disagreement. The cops pulled me out of there. I called the kid in on Sunday, and I called the family, and I said, listen, your son's going to make more money as an accountant. He has this opportunity. Yes. He's good with numbers, and he could be an accountant for 40 years. And he'll make so much more money than 2 years in the NFL with no degree. You're approaching it wrong. The best value you can get out of this isn't that. It's not the shiny gold ring. It's the future. It's the real future. And they thought I was an absolute criminal for what I had done to their son. I couldn't convince them otherwise. And that was a day I realized football had changed.
Yeah.
Yep. There was so much money in it. That the people that had never had any money couldn't get past the allure of that.
It's so in their face.
And now it's not the families that are there. It's these kids. And they're 18, 19, 20. And they make terrible decisions to give up education with the allure of, someone said there's $1.5 million for a quarterback, and I'm not making that.
Yeah. Right. I mean, Matt Rule at Nebraska came out the other day and talked about it.
It's tough to tell them not to, too. So that's the other hard part. It's so they don't – if they can't – if you're 18, 19, even the quarterbacks, they're 21 years old, these guys, okay? And you're saying, okay, you made $1 million last year at UCLA. Now you're going to jump in the portal. Instead of making $1 million, you're going to make $2-3 million. And you cannot get them to think differently. Like it's crazy.
The money's not real. There are not a lot of kids making $1 million. It's easy to say. You're talking about 5 kids out of thousands.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And those are, Deion's son is going to go make $1 million.
Yeah, he's doing an Allstate commercial already. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
but that's because of the dad.
The other kid's got a
right.
Caleb Williams kid at USC's got a Wendy's commercial, right? Like, it's crazy.
But you can count those guys on one hand. That's
right.
not the norm.
No,
if you're not Deion Sanders' 2 sons, you're not doing AT&T or whatever they're doing.
Deion's ushering indirectly more of the problem too, because and everything he goes on. I just saw it last night. The guy from 24/7, this guy Coach Reed, he was interviewing Deion, and Deion said and I saw all these different podcasts where guys were like, "Oh, Deion's in it for himself." Deion flat out said last night on the podcast that he needs to protect Shador, okay? He needs to make sure – he's like, I'm a dad, and I couldn't believe it because he's saying it like – it's not like he's being prodded. I'm a dad. I saw my son getting beat up in the games. I need to get a run game. I need to get a D-line to stop the run game. But he's talking openly about how important it is to protect his son, which obviously is saying, hey, my son's going to go to the NFL – I need to protect this kid's future. He didn't talk once about Colorado.
Do you have a son, Dave?
Yes.
Okay. I coached my son, and it was the best thing in the world I ever did.
Yes, you did.
And the worst thing.
Yes,
right?
Agreed.
I'm 10 feet away from my son, Joe, when he has a shoulder, and he's going to need 2 operations. You want to talk about agonizing, and I got to treat him like everybody else.
Right.
But I had 40 years of coaching. I was a 20-year college head coach. I have over 100 wins. I have championships, undefeated seasons. I coached in the Big Ten. I coached in the Big 12. I was on the sideline for Army Navy. And it was still hard. Imagine taking a guy that's never done it. I give Deion Sanders all the credit in the world, not just because he was a better player than I'll ever dream of being.
Right, of course.
But he can market himself
and the best.
Get a job that there's no qualification for other than he's a great marketer. He had 3 years of coaching under his belt.
Right.
And that changed the dynamic of how all these presidents, the biggest change in college football before NIL, before the transfer portal, right? When we were young, if you fell down, they said, get up, right? When you were a little kid, you were playing in the street in Brooklyn where I grew up. If you fell on a street day, everybody in the neighborhood said, get up. Nobody said, oh my God, he fell down. And you had to be tough, and you had to fight through hard things. And now every time you yell I had a Big 12 team call me a couple of years ago and say, we want you to come out of retirement and coach the O-line. Now, I've done that. I can do that. I did it in that league. And I said, well, it's something to consider. But, tell me more about it. And they said, well, we have one concern. I said, what's your concern? I can't be X's and O's. I've done all that. And I said, well, our policy is you can't yell at the kids. I said, excuse me? They said, yeah, because if you yell at them too much, then they quit. They call mom and dad and they say, you don't have to get yelled at. We'll find you a new place. And you leave. And there's no punishment to quitting. Whereas that is the exact antithesis of what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to fight through hard times to get to great times. And when you say you can't yell at someone, well, I'm not talking about attacking the person or swearing.
Berating.
I'm talking about when you do something wrong, being corrected, and being corrected hard so that it sticks, so that your performance gets better to help the group. And I don't think hard coaching is bad. I think it's terrific. I hired a lot of coaches, and I want you to care enough to coach hard. I don't want you to attack anybody because it's not personal, right? It's never you did this. It's that was wrong. There's a huge difference. But when you say kids are allowed to quit and leave with no penalties for no reason, that's where we've made a mistake. and you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't put the pace back in the tube.
That's a great.
What we've done is we've allowed people to be honored for quitting, and it's the wrong thing. Now, there should be exceptions when a coach leaves.
Right.
I've
always felt
that's
been something that was in there, right? Like if you're recruited by this guy and all of a sudden 2 years into your stint, he gets axed and he's gone and your position coaches you should have had that one time I can go and do what I do.
Not the position coach, because right now the position coach isn't going to be there 5 years. It's not like the old days. Right? There were guys that stayed up with Bear Bryant for 30 years.
Yeah, that's not happening.
But now the position coaches, I'll give you the best answer to that. When I was a kid, and I'm older than you guys by a lot, but for Father's Day, you'd give Dad a mug, right? World's best dad.
Yes.
And that mug would be on his desk, and he would drink coffee from that mug every day. That was his mug. Now, nobody has a mug at work. They all drink out of styrofoam cups, and they're disposable. And that's what the assistant coaches in Division I football. They are disposable. As soon as something doesn't go well, now they don't even let them get to a season. As soon as something doesn't go well, you throw that cup away and you get another one. Yep. There's 10,000 coaches for 3,000 jobs. They're as replaceable as anything could ever be. So you can't base anything on the assistant coach that recruited you. And you and your high school coach and whoever's helping you with it should know that. But the head coach, when I retired, right, those kids that signed in December, they should have a chance to go re-sign in February, right? That should be an easy one,
right? Especially with the new early signing day. That's a new thing too.
I was on the AFCA rules committee when that first came up, right? I was part of, the conversations about those things. And the reality is that there should be leeway for kids when coaches leave. Something dramatic happens, but I got yelled at, so I'm quitting. That shouldn't be allowed. It's the opposite of what we're supposed to be teaching in the sport.
Quitting should be the last resort, not the first resort. That's what's going.
You couldn't say it better than that. I'm going to steal that line from you, David.
That's exactly what it is.
It's really and no one wants to fight for it, right? You try and tell a backup quarterback, like, all right, you're not the starter right now, you're the 2, but man, you're an ankle roll away from going in a game. You're the helmet coming off against them, going in and throwing a touchdown pass, and now all of a sudden things look a little different. They don't want to fight through it.
Go compete.
Right.
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 But
where is that?
You see, when it was the backup quarterback, I hated it. But now it's the starting quarterbacks that are doing it.
Well, that's the strange part. The
guys that are having success.
The psychology of it all. The psychology
success are leaving.
I see it. My son's 8 years old, and Derek knows this because I talked to him about our. He started playing tackle football this year. He played quarterback. I had another kid on the team that was a fantastic athlete, and he literally led our team in touchdowns. Scored 10 touchdowns, in youth football, which is a lot, and he was great. He's gonna be a really good running back, And at the end of the season, his father wasn't happy. He was the star player on our team that only lost one game. He wasn't happy. I got to feel it. Well, he didn't say it to me, but I got when you get the vibe. You can feel the vibe. Happy. So he wasn't happy because he didn't play as much quarterback. I said, "You're carrying the ball." I mean, and that's the other thing that's funny and shifted. It's like when I grew up, and obviously you've been through it as a coach for 40 years. The quarterback wasn't just the guy who was the best athlete, which a lot of I call it a bout of lazy coaching, right? The guy also. You want to be a really good athlete, but you want to be able to understand everything that's going on. You want him to be able to get people lined up when there's something going on that you can't control as a coach, right? When you're not out there. Those things are really important. And so many people just want to play. I'm like, why do you want to play quarterback? I
wouldn't.
I go talk to these folks. I talk to high school coaches and college coaches. And I have to explain to them the difference between a sight adjust and a hot. They're not even teaching these things to these kids. They're not taking protections and putting them towards pressures.
They're not matching them up.
No.
They're just winging it. They're saying, hey, this is the protect. Like, they have no idea.
We'll be in the shotgun and we'll throw it fast and all's good that ends.
Right.
And they're not teaching fundamental things that I, as a high school coach, did 40 years ago, more now. So,
and I think it deals a lot too with, like, now you're seeing just the entire coaching world sort of go a little, because you got these young guys that are coming up. That's great. They're energetic. They're excited. They want to be in the coaching profession, but they don't want to put in the extra work. They don't want to do the clinic work. They don't want to sit down and X and O on a board and really get the mental side of the game to match it up.
I don't think they're lazy. I hear people tell me that, the younger generation is lazy.
No, definitely
I think
not.
what they're doing, Derek, I think is they're taking the path of least resistance, because they don't want to, the parents don't want to hear about,
Correct.
Your son doesn't know what a hot is. Your son doesn't know what sight adjust.
Because they don't know
how to change the protection. Your son, he's just the biggest, fastest, strongest kid, so he's going to be the quarterback.
Yep.
Years ago, God, I don't remember where I was coaching, but there was a time a guy named Tony Baselli was the best offensive lineman.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Jaguars.
Yep.
And I tell this story, and Derek, because you've been at camps with me. But when we were college coaches, no matter what happened, whatever the fad was, we studied the NFL. When Pittsburgh Steelers started zone blitz stuff, Iowa was zone blitzing out of their ears. We had to study all the NFL tape to see what to do and how to do it. Well, the one year, the head coach walked down the hall and said, I want to know why Baselli is so good. Okay. So we started studying it, and we took every left tackle in the NFL. Well, the thing we found Baselli is he was a high school quarterback, and he was recruited as a tight end. And it wasn't until he was the end of his sophomore year that they moved him to left tackle.
He understood defenses.
Well, and he was the best athlete, so he became the quarterback. Right. Well, the best athlete keeps growing sometimes.
Right. That's right.
And so we went back and looked at every left tackle in the NFL, and more than 40%, almost 50% of them were high school quarterbacks. So then you go, and there's a dad of an 8-year-old, and he says, my son's a quarterback. How can you possibly know that when the NFL doesn't know what kids are going to grow up to be?
Correct.
There are parameters.
Travis Kelce was a quarterback. They moved him to tight end. The rest is history, right?
Yeah, and if he grew another 50 pounds, they make him a left tackle.
Correct.
You don't know what they're going to be when they're 30 years old.
Who is it? I think it was Logan Thomas, Virginia Tech. He's now, I believe, with the Commanders. Big-time tight end in the league. Played quarterback in college.
That's right. So to try and guess what somebody's going to become, none of us have that mystical power.
No.
What
Correct.
you do is you coach guys, and you teach them, and you make them learn about football, and then as their body grows and develops, it'll fit something. Don't do it the other way and say, you're going to be this. You're a linebacker. Well,
yeah, you don't want to pigeonhole one of those guys into a specific position at such a young. And Dave and I talk about this all the time, right?
It's backwards.
Look, these kids are 8 years old, right? Play every position. You don't know what's going to sink in. And these guys, they come to him at 8 years old, and it's, my kid's a wide receiver. My kid. Right. What are we doing?
By the way, with it's and honestly, I'll put it like this: most of the parents are, it's always the way it is. 95% of the parents are absolutely fantastic. Fantastic. Yes. It's only like one out of, you're in a youth program, 30 kids on your team, one that, and even them, it's not that they don't, because I've coached for so many years, obviously, and played. So it's kind of hard to confront, especially as a youth coach, my knowledge versus other people's knowledge. But it's you get the vibe, and it's like, hey, we talk about this all the time. There's one football on the field, right? Like there's the best. I would say and me and Derek talked about this all the time. You want to stand out, go play defense. Go play defense. You want to stand out immediately. Be a star in defense. Everyone's going to go nuts when you're getting sacks and every single tackle, and everybody will know who the best player is on the team. And it's hard to convince guys of that. But that's
to score touchdowns and be the shiny,
but again,
want to be that guy.
Well, we changed a little bit. The conversation to me is still about youth coaches and high school coaches and now college coaches.
College coaches, right?
Where they're taking that path of least resistance to make the parents. Instead of having the hard conversation, hey, we have to teach. You have to learn, right? There's a way to do things properly.
There's a process.
That's right. Instead of just go play. And we're to the just go play because you're the best athlete. And it's never all of anything, right? It's not all the coaches. It's not all the parents. It's not all the but the winning has become, it starts above us, obviously, but in Division I football, it changed when the money changed. When all the games got on TV,
Yes.
In the Big Ten, they're making $100 million. You can't even say the number without laughing by being in the Big Ten. Rutgers doesn't belong in the Big Ten. Maryland doesn't belong in the Big Ten. USC doesn't belong in the Big Ten. Not athletically, but, the ACC has Cal and Stanford in it. The Atlantic Coast, listen to the words. But the Atlantic Coast has 2 teams from Los Angeles in it because of money. It's not because of
it's all
rivals
money.
or geography or what's best for the kids. It's just money.
Well, the money forces the trickle down thought process all the way down.
Now everybody has to buy it,
and then
because that's where it's coming from.
And then the culture in sports in general at the lower levels, like high school and youth, is play as many games as you can. No development. Like I sound like a crazy person when I'm like, are we going to practice at all this week for basketball? So I got now, of course, you now, instead of being able to get in the old days, recreation used to have practice. Remember the crazy old days? Now recreation is just games. Now you got to go to a club sport to practice.
The thing is in a game,
crazy.
In a game, I don't care what lacrosse game, it doesn't matter what game, you might have the ball in your hands for 5% of the time. But when you go to a practice, I could get you 100 shots.
Correct.
I can get you 200 shots. And so we're slowing down development in order to appease the people that want to see competition.
That's right.
The issue is teaching once again, right? Nobody wants to take the time to learn. They just want to perform. They're missing a step. I tell you a story. I was being interviewed for a Division I head coaching job years ago, and we had a lot of success. There's still only 2 football championships at Bryant University in its history, right? And I was both of them, and I played for 3 other championships, and nobody else has done any of those things before or after. And I think they're doing a lot of good things. But we were pretty hot for a while there, and it was all Jersey kids too. Mostly, thank God. But I was being interviewed for a Division I head coaching job. And I told the athletic director, I'm not sure I fit. He said, why? I said, well, we had a starting tight end show up 5 minutes late for a team breakfast for a championship game, and I benched him. And if I do that with you at your school, is that going to be okay? Because I'm not going to change. I'm not going to bend. We're going to teach. They're going to have a written test. If they're not the best, if they're not the best practice player and the best test taker and the best performer, then they're not going to apply if they can't follow the rules. If we're going to graduate all the players, not just some or try, we're going to make them all graduate. If you're in college for 4 years and you take 15 credits a semester and you're paying for summer school, how do they not graduate?
Right.
Put them in the right classroom, make them do it. You have tutors, you have study hall, you have all these things. Just don't give in on it. If I make you graduate and I make you accountable and I make you be on time and I make you study and learn, how do you lose? But they want it the other way. They don't want the process to lead to a conclusion. They want to win, and whatever you have to do that is okay. And the athletic director at the time said, what you say is good, but I can't be guaranteed we win that way. And I said, you can't be guaranteed we win quickly that way.
Right.
It's going to take time because what you have now
or wins and losses.
What you have now is a disaster. You have the process coming after the solution.
Yep.
Right. So you have to flip it. And that takes time because you're going to lose kids because it's a hard change. I've done it. But people don't want to have that answer and solution. Right. They don't want to know that, hey, in this day and age, it's going to take 2 or 3 years before we get traction because we're not going to just rely on all these quick answers. We're going to build something that will stand the test of time. Once we build it, though, we're going to be good forever.
Right. I'm not bringing in a modular home here. I'm really digging the foundation. I got the best bricks coming in. This is how we're going to develop it. Give me 2 years. But the way it is now, it's why the transfer portal, it's why high school kids are losing out on
Is that because of the fan bases too? Is that the main driver?
It's because the athletic directors are making so much money they can't afford to get fired.
Got it.
Right? It goes right down the hill. The head coach will fire his coordinator to save another year on his contract.
Right.
To try and get another year on his contract. Because you're paying $4 million a year. I'd fire you too. And I like you too. The money is so great that nobody has the willingness to fight for what's right. It's what's ruined the sport is the money.
Is there anyone doing it? Is there any coach out there that you see, like, who comes the closest to fighting it? Is it Dabo down at Clemson because he spoke out about what he said at the transfer portal? Is it Shiano because we see him a lot with this type of thing, kind of standing his ground?
I think there's a lot of them, but it's the ones that are in a position where they're as strong as the athletic director.
They have stability within the
Coach
program.
Saban. I coached against Nick when he was at Toledo, when he was at Michigan State. I visited him when he was at Miami a lot. So he doesn't give an inch, right? But he's had so much success.
He can do that.
There's no question. If the AD came in and said, Nick, we're going to have a power fight to see who stays here longer, who wins that?
Yeah.
Right? You can't even tell me the AD at Clemson or Rutgers. And we're in the profession, right? Those coaches that have made that stand have the best programs. And there's going to be a dip sometimes. There's going to be, some ups and downs because kids can cut and run. But even Mike Gundy, you go look at Oklahoma State. Now they go in the portal more.
Phenomenal track record.
But he wins because they can block and tackle and teach, and he keeps kids there, and they're doing those right.
He's sustained that program. He's sustained that winning, right? And he's all like you can tell. Listen, he went viral when he went off on the guy. I'm a man. I'm 40, right? But like he literally, that's truly how he feels. He defends his players to, you know what I'm saying, and he did it publicly. Where
God bless him.
I don't know where most people would do that.
I tell you what, do you remember the coach at Kansas State that changed it from the worst program in the world?
Snyder.
Right?
Snyder's the best in history, man.
So Bill Snyder. So he was at Iowa coaching. He took the head coaching job at Kansas State. His second or third year there, he was on shaky ground. He was on real shaky ground. I was the O-line coach. No, I was running back coach at Indiana State.
I believe he had the Stoopses as his GAs. Stoopses and the Matt Sakis. So Matt Sakis, Jersey guy, there's the connection there. Like they were all his on staff with him there.
That's right. Because they played at Iowa. They played at,
Yep.
So, but the year they changed, his fortunes changed, some people would say. He was in danger of losing to Indiana State. We had Sean Payton as our quarterback coach, and we threw a couple of touchdown passes in the fourth quarter. We broke a long run. And we got ahead by one. It was 23, 22, 24, 20. I'm too old to remember that. But we decided to go for two, which was the right call. The head coach was Dennis Rates. We use a timeout. Dave Maggis, who's the offense coordinator, he's passed away. He's a great coach. And we go for two, and I'm on the field. I tell the little quarterback, hey, whatever you do, we're ahead. So don't take a chance with the ball. Just throw the naked over here. If there's nothing there, bang it off the back of the end zone. Hit a bleacher. Hit some dopey kid that's standing there in the ring. It was the first game of the year, and we threw the interception. It was the first time in history of college football they ran a 2-point conversion back the other way for 2 points. Ooh. We were ahead by one. We lost by one with a minute left.
There it is.
And the point of the story was there's a guy that they gave him time, and he ended up being world famous for turning it. Even though he took transfers, he took a lot of JUCOs and but he made them play football the right way. And it took 3 or 4 years to get traction. That was year 3 of him. And they thought if we beat them that game, 1AA Indiana State coming to Kansas State, that the thing might fall apart and they might fire him right then. It's that close sometimes. How long will we hang in there with these coaches? But when they do get traction and it does develop the right way, that's when good things happen for long periods of time. The other thing is not sustainable in my home. I lost you guys for a minute. I hope you're okay.
Good. I'm good. I don't know. Maybe we hit something, Coach. I don't know. I apologize. Listen, what's crazy about you referring to Kansas State and that turnaround is, like I said, because, my relationship with the Matt Sakises and then that conversation, that's always where, Jimmy or Manny would talk about and say, look, Coach Snyder did it differently than everybody else. He said, we used to practice how to celebrate touchdowns.
That's right.
How to work with, like, I mean, the attention to detail that he brought into that program is something that, in my eyes, you know, being a high school coach, having coached for, you know, a good 14 seasons now, different programs around Jersey, college, this, that, kids just, they could care less about the process, right? It's about what gets me now, or me, how many carries did I get?
Go watch the difference in celebration, right? It used to be if you had a sack, a big fourth down stop, you and all your teammates celebrated together. Now they sprint away from their teammates to become
that guy,
to be that focus of everybody. Don't worry about your team, and the rest will take care of itself, is what we were raised with.
Of course.
And
it's the ultimate team game. You're trying to get 11 guys to do their job, where on every single play, majority of the jobs that are being done are not going to get rewarded other than the position coach saying, hey, good job, bud. You're not going to be in the spotlight. That's the greatness of the game itself.
That the ability to put your ego away and be part of a group, right? Subjugate your own ego for the good of the group used to be the most common thing. I played in college for Tom Cahill, right? He'd been, talk about it, you know, circumstances. He's the greatest man I was ever around, one of them. And he'd been in the Army, and he coached at West Point in 66 or 67. He was the national coach of the year, right? Army was as big as it got. When the Vietnam War came, nobody sent their kids to West Point anymore. All of a sudden, he was a bad coach. So he goes and takes another job. I go play for him. And he said every day, don't separate yourself from the group. Be part of the group, right? Put your ego away and be part of the group. Do what the group does. When something great happens, it happens to all of us. Something bad happens, it happens to all of us. It's nobody's fault. It's nobody's credit. It's all our fault and all our credit. And years later, decades later, I'm coaching at Navy and walking out of the Meadowlands after practice on Friday, and he's walking in as the radio voice of Army. And he's with Bobby Knight and Bill Parcells and his group of friends that he'd been there with. And he stops and we're talking, and his wife is with him. And he says, the best thing about the academy is, because I mentioned the thing that I took into coaching from him the most.
Right.
And he said, the best thing is that when you're at the academy, the school provides that it's reinforced every day.
Yes, you're part of this. You're part of something bigger. You're part of this institution, and it's just hard. These kids, it's. I don't want to use the word loyalty, right? But that's you see these kids. You know, this kid's on his third school in 3 years. Like,
well, and it's high school football too now. Go to Florida, and there's no penalty for transferring schools.
Right.
And now
it's not because your family moved.
Coming to Jersey.
And Jersey has just implemented it too. You, at high school, up until your junior year, you are now allowed, you have a one-time free transfer where you can transfer to any school, and now you can play right away.
But Miami is unlimited.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You can do five.
Florida's the Wild West.
You can play football at one school and track at another because the track coach is nicer and knows more.
Yeah.
And so what is that
I can make more money doing this.
Well, that's right. So what is it teaching? Now you put a kid in college, you try and coach him hard. Hey, I know what to do. I'll just go somewhere else where they don't coach so hard.
Yep. And they'll take me. And the problem is they'll take me right away. That other coach is not saying, well, why are you leaving here, dude? Or what, you know, your situation here is pretty good. You're coming to me. Why? Those guys just see a shiny new penny. Let's go. See,
I go to Bryant, and my first spring there was not a single person on the campus that had thrown a forward pass at a football game. They'd been running option football. The quarterback that had thrown a little bit had to leave for whatever reason. We didn't have one. So we recruited high school kids. And we took a kid from Franklin Lakes, Rampo High School, Charlie Granitel.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie was 5'9"-ish, maybe if I stretch him, maybe 170 pounds.
In cleats.
but was smart, understood, tough, competitive, had no quit in him, had all the qualities we want. But the first year there, I think we won 5 games. And there was huge criticism, even at Bryant College, about you picked the wrong one. You have this other 2 or 3 kids that are bigger and taller. But I knew he was the right one. And the next year we win 6 or 7 and play for a playoff spot. And the year after that, we're the number 1 seed in the D2 playoffs. And it was because of development, because the leader of the team had no quit in him. So the other kids didn't quit. And if they did, you didn't want those kids.
Right.
So when we went to Florida to recruit kids, and you had to do some of that, it's just natural recruiting. We're in Jersey, we're in Connecticut, we're in Massachusetts. We're taking every Rhode Island kid that we can get that's good enough. But
we have that conversation all the time about where you come from and where you play determines what you do in college.
No question. But you go to Florida and you say, okay, let me see the kid's transcript. He said, well, you got to go to 4 different schools to get it. Oh, okay, save your time because I'm not taking the kid in the end.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen when it gets tough here is exactly that same thing. It's a pattern of behavior. I understand when you're the 2, but let's go back to the beginning of the conversation. Now we're talking about a quarterback who they give the job to at Ohio State. They put their careers on that kid's back. He goes 11-1. He's playing in a bowl game against Ohio State is going to play not Georgia. I don't remember. Missouri. They're playing Missouri in a bowl game. Ohio State. They're in a big-time January.
It's a big bowl game. I think it's a New Year's 6.
It is. And they're playing Missouri, this 2 or 3 best team in the SEC, right? Number 13 in the country.
And he's a character, too.
And Eli?
Yeah, did you see him yesterday? He was
no, but he's a great football coach.
He said, "Oh, Connor, or whatever, the guy at Michigan, the sign guy. He's like, oh, he's calling me right now. I gotta go." Right, and they're dying, right? I mean, and he can't either way. To me, it's mind-boggling, right? Like you said,
you tie yourself to a quarterback. You tie yourself to the face of a program. He goes 11-1, and he walks out on you before the bowl game. I mean, that's the damnest I've ever heard in my life.
It's crazy.
I will tell you this, though. The best coach in college football, right? I've had people ask me this question. The best job, the coach of the year, is the guy at New Mexico State, Jerry Kill. I don't know him.
Unbelievable job.
I've never met him.
You never met Jerry?
Nope. When I was at Indiana, we coached against the guys that were before him, and they did a really good job. He was at Southern Illinois after I was at Indiana State. He just after me a bunch of places. But I've been in New Mexico State. I was the head coach of New Mexico Highlands for 3 years. I was the linebacker coach at Western New Mexico University in 82 or 83 or something. So I've lived in New Mexico, and I know what they have to do. For him to win 9 or 10 games,
it's incredible.
With a backup quarterback half the season, that's the best coaching job in America, bar none.
Bar none.
And he'll get no love.
The quarterback is 5'9" also.
Again,
5'9".
It's the player.
Right.
It's not the other things, right?
No,
it finds a guy who can do great things. They scored 35 points for a backup quarterback in the championship game against Liberty. Yep. Now, the guy at Liberty
Liberty's a top, you know what I mean?
Well, they were undefeated, I think.
They are undefeated.
Yeah, Liberty's
Chadwell did a great job at Coastal. He did a great job at Coastal Carolina. I was fortunate. I retired here to Myrtle Beach, so I can go over and watch them play. He did a great job coaching. And he did a great job at Liberty. The issue he's going to have is the Paul Johnson issue, right? Yep. Paul Johnson got run out of Georgia Tech because it was hard to recruit kids that were going to play in the NFL. Because
that stuff just doesn't correlate to what the NFL is.
That's right. So Georgia Tech said, well, in order for us to get NFL players, we got to run NFL style. And now
we got to change our system. We got to do all this other kind of stuff.
Instead of just winning games is enough.
Right.
And it's the same thing for Liberty. Right, you could say to Mississippi State or whatever SEC school you want to name, Vanderbilt, whatever, we're going to do something different. But is it sustainable? Because they want NFL players. And I don't know that the running option football gives you that anymore. And that's why the academies still do it. It gives you a chance. It's a great equalizer. I've lived that life, believe me. But, I had 5'9" quarterbacks, Antoine Mandel, and he got Heisman votes. And Charlie Brown.
Imagine if that guy in one of these RPO systems today.
Well,
or Seneca Wallace.
Yeah,
we had Antoine running what all these guys call this newfangled stuff. We were in the shotgun running inside zone.
Remember that?
Yeah. Could you imagine those guys where now that's like what people, you know what I mean? Like those, it would be, guys would be, they'd be coming to try and clinic with you all day, every day.
Well, we were very fortunate. We scored the most points of any visiting team in the history of Wisconsin Stadium, Camp Randall. We scored 60 up there one night. We had the most rushing yards of any visiting team in the history against Michigan State. When I took the transition at Bryant from Division II to Division I, we tied the national record for the best year in the history of the NCAA.
What year was
Madison just beat it.
What year did you transition? First off, what year did you get to Bryant, Coach?
2004, I think.
Okay, so 2004 was your first season there?
I believe so.
So that was so that makes a ton. So my freshman year at Sacred Heart was your first year at Bryant.
Boy, you really got to rub that in, don't you?
Sorry, Coach. I'm just saying. I mean, come on now. Hey, listen, I'll be very honest. I didn't know anything about Bryant or whatever, but when I went up there for that camp, I was just blown away. It was beautiful. The new indoor was just being put up. I think it actually had just fallen down in the winter and was being put back up. And then, but I mean, I looked at it, and the new weight room was going in the end zone. Like, you could just tell that this little, quote, Division II field was turning into something way bigger.
I got two quick stories.
It was phenomenal.
We were building the weight room, and the guy that were donating to it, there were a group of great guys and alums that wanted football to go. And they said, we want the biggest one in New England. So I snuck a guy into BC, and we measured it when no one was looking. And we made sure ours was 6 square foot bigger.
Every little bit helps, Coach.
I'm sitting at breakfast one morning during training camp, and I'm sitting with the head of the cafeteria. The team is coming in to eat. You know, I was always there and having a cup of coffee when they were coming in. I wanted to make sure the kid was in the door. And then the facilities guy and the head of the campus police and myself, we had coffee in the morning. They're great guys. It was a great place to work when I got there. And all of a sudden, the guy comes running over, and everybody's beepers are going off, their walkie-talkies. I get a phone call, Coach, you got to come up. We got a problem at the indoor. And the facility guy says, I don't know what's going on. Marty, jump on the cart. So we go running up there, and the building fell over, right? So I'm the first one on the scene with these 3 other men. And I am the least likely person in the world to go climbing on something or going into something that looks like it's going to fall. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, I don't know, guys. And they said, no, we got to go in there and pull people out. I said, we do? We? Who's we?
We?
You like, mouse in your pocket?
You're like, I'm a football coach here.
Yeah, I could draw up, toss, sweep, and protections. I got to go in there. He said, yes. Well, I'm taking the first one I find. So I go running in this thing scared to death. I'm not a hero. And there's a guy laying on the ground, and he's moaning, and he doesn't look particularly good. But I feel like this whole metal structure is about to fall on our head. So I said, I got to drag you out, buddy. So I grab him by the back of his neck, and I drag him out from underneath the metal. And I said, is anything broke? He goes, I don't think so. I said, I don't see any blood. I don't see any bones.
If there was, it sure is now from pulling out, but at least you're out here.
So I pull him out, and now here come the cops, and here come all the people. And I got this guy finally calmed down. He's a good guy. And I got him calmed down a little bit. And I said, look, nothing's broke. There's no blood. We're going to take care of you. You know, we're out from underneath the thing. It's not going to fall on us. I'm not going back in there. And I got you. And we're on this dirt road. You know, it's a construction site. So here comes the cops, and here comes the ambulances. And the state of Rhode Island was fantastic with helping us and being supportive. And this ambulance pulls up and comes to a screeching halt and throws dirt and rocks all over the 2 of us. And I'm like, gee, mini Christmas. You see, we're laying here in the road. The lady jumps out of the ambulance, and she's screaming, get away from my patient. Get away from my patient. And I'm like, whoa, easy. I don't want to be a doctor. You got him.
Yeah.
And he's saying, I feel okay now. I can get up. And she's saying, don't you move. And she pulls out this giant pair of scissors. And he's saying, what are you doing with that? He says, I'm going to cut your shirt. I'm going to make sure that there's no bleeding. I'm going to cut off all your clothes. He said, oh, no, you're not. And the guy's, I don't know, 40, 45 years old. He got a big beard. He's a construction guy. And she says, I said, and now the guy's getting all excited again. I said, I just had him calm down. Relax, everybody. Relax. He's going to be okay. The whole thing is going to be okay. There's nobody underneath it. And she says, no, I'm cutting off his shirt and checking his vitals right now. And she's yelling and screaming, getting all excited. And so she cuts off his shirt, and the guy's bright red. I said, what's the matter with you? And they cut off his shirt, and he's got these big nipple ring things on. I said, I can't swear on this show. I said, holy cow.
You can
said,
swear
what the heck
to
is that? He says, I got a 1-year-old girlfriend, coach. I got to be hip. I said, hip? You just had a building fall on you. He said,
you're worried about your
personal jewelry, we'll call it.
That's it, coach.
Jewelry.
That's it. I guess it just points out you never know what you're working with, right?
I got up, I walked over to the practice field, and I said, let's go, man. We got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, be like training camp. Don't worry about it. Leave the commotion over there. My man is going to be
That's
okay.
A great
coach,
story.
That's great.
Thank God nobody got hurt. The building went up. The president of the college, Ron Makeley, was the best guy in the world for getting the stuff that you need.
Beautiful.
When I got there, we had 50 yards of practice field. That was it. That was the entire football facility. We didn't have an office. We didn't have anything. And when I left, we had built a whole wing on a building. We had a full football office, a full training room, a full weight room, an indoor, 4 practice fields. And
I believe it was the biggest indoor in the Northeast.
I don't know that. We had the biggest weight room in the Northeast. That I guarantee you.
That is beautiful, right? And that's kind of been the staple now. Like I see a lot of these stadiums that are now, trying to get to that next level. That's what they're doing is they're putting one of those, type of buildings in an end zone with nothing but glass where the weight room can look out and the alumni can
the indoor I used to build it off of was Matsakis. Do you remember across from his office there used to be that bubble? I keep looking at that thing saying, boy, if I could double or triple the size of this thing, we'd have something.
Yeah.
And that was the start of the idea. Boy, we could build something like this. I tried to buy defunct tennis places first. I figured, they had those tennis bubbles all over Connecticut.
Right. Yeah.
I figured if one of them goes out of business, we could put that on a truck, deflate it, put the pieces on a truck, bring it here and throw it over a turf field. In the end, it was easier and better to design our own to actually fit football.
Yep.
So that's what we ended up doing.
You left that place way better than you brought it. That's way better when you got there.
Well, I appreciate that. We worked hard and we won a lot of games. And so all that credit goes to the assistant coaches and the administration.
I mean, you had some great guys, but you know how it works. Unless those guys up top really buy in and say, hey, football is going to be important here, especially at a place like Bryant where, it's kind of off the beaten path. You kind of got to go out of your way a little bit to kind of get there. You know what I mean? Like you need something else that appeals to a player.
Well, we got so popular because at one point before they started football, they didn't have a homecoming. They tried to use a soccer game for homecoming. That just doesn't have the appeal of bringing in thousands and thousands of alums. Across the street from us was a huge Fidelity Investments building with parking lot. We had to rent that on the weekends and shuttle people to the games.
Yeah.
They never dreamed it would get to that point. So, I'm really thankful for the 14, 13 years, whatever it was that I had there. It made
it was a good run.
The exclamation point for a lot of positive things. I was very lucky. I was the youngest head coach in the country when I got the job at Sonoma State. Larry Allen played there and Freddie Coleman, guys that went on and played. And I was a part of that, not all of it, but I was a part of it, of making it something special. And, like I said before, I got to coach in one of the great Army Navy games of all time. We had Frank Schenk, our kicker, kicked one, 17 yards with 19 seconds left or something for the win in the Meadowlands. And so I coached in the Iowa State games and the old Oaken Bucket, Indiana, Purdue. And so I was lucky. I had a great career. I was blessed any number of ways. But the thing I'm most happy about is you can go to any place and we made a difference in kids.
Yes.
My last coaching job was the head coach at New Mexico Highlands. And if you just took the quarterback room, Danny Cameron is now coaching at Illinois. And they didn't think he'd graduate from college, and he did. And he did a great job there. The next quarterback, Gunnar Mefford, came in, and he's a police officer, a law and order guy in California. And, everybody in that room made it. And, if you can do that and win games along the way, then I really feel like you gave back to the profession pretty good.
Yeah, I think, the fact that you provided not just success, but stability in each place that you went. See, I look at just the top 6 teams, obviously there's controversy about who should be in the top 4. I actually think that they got it right, even though Florida State got, somewhat screwed. I get both sides of it. But what I noticed is each one of those coaches, Harbaugh at one time was getting heat. They gave him an opportunity to continue to succeed, and he proved them right. He succeeded. Florida State, when Norvell first came in, everybody was screaming about, blah, blah, blah.
Deion should be the coach, right?
Right. The Washington coach has done a phenomenal job in a shorter time period, but Sarkisian, right?
You look at that.
Sarkisian, of his first year, they were like, oh, is he the right? And so each one of these situations, and all of these guys, other than obviously Nick Saban, are like around maybe a little bit younger than 50, but around that age mark. Nick Saban obviously is old. I think those guys are like Harbaugh's around 60, I think, or 60. Washington coach is like 47. I was just looking at Texas. Sarkisian's 49. I think Kirby Smart's 47. Something, they're all like around that. I can't remember what Norvell is. He's a couple of years older, but they're all somewhat seasoned, right? And all have had different roads, and now given an opportunity to have stability and to be able to have that chance to succeed, even in the advent of all this transfer stuff, okay, gives the core players, and that's, I think, a big part of it, right? You unfortunately, the way the situation is, there's going to be some movement in some of your star players, possibly, but your core players, your offensive linemen, your defensive linemen, your linebackers, okay, your tight ends, those guys, and people say whatever they want. The offensive line and defensive line is where the games are still being won. And if those guys think there's stability in the program, they're going to stick around a lot longer. If those guys stick around a lot longer, then eventually those better players are going to start. They're actually bigger drivers than people realize of the successful program. Kirby Smart's team, Georgia, obviously O-line, D-line dominant. Obviously, Nick Saban's team is O-line, D-line dominant. You know,
SEC, like the SEC D-lines are.
Florida State was D-line dominant. You know,
and their best player came from Albany.
The thing that happens in the end, though, is because you're right, you're 100% right, is nobody realized those quarterbacks are not going to play well if you can't protect them. And on the flip side, if I can go pressure the quarterback with 4, knock him around, he's not going to play well because I can do 1,000 things with the skill guys.
Yep.
So, like when we had Seneca Wallace, we threw it, I don't know, 380 times, but only gave up 14 sacks. It was the lowest percentage of throws to sacks in the country that year. And it was because he was great about knowing where the pressure was coming from, getting out of the way. Yeah, he could move, and he was accurate with the ball. He threw a really pretty ball.
Oh, tight spiral.
And so, but if you can't protect them, right? The one game we couldn't protect them was Oklahoma, and they ran us out of the yard because we couldn't protect them.
Right.
And so in the end, if you can get stability in those spots, if I can always protect you and I can always pressure you with the 5 and the 4, then everything else falls into place, right? You could recruit to anything else. Now, I will say this, Dave. The only time I've disagreed with you guys all day is I hate the fact that they have made the top of college football a dance recital or a gymnastics meet or where the score doesn't matter, right? And now it's a beauty pageant, right? I think Alabama looks better. 100%. I think Alabama looks better than Florida State.
Absolutely.
So that's where I'm going to go. But in all your years coaching, how many upsets have you seen?
Oh, yeah.
You can't guarantee me Alabama beats Florida State.
No.
Because therefore might be able to get pressure.
Yep.
That's how Texas got them. So I still believe it has to be one on the field. And if you're 13-0 and a conference champion, again, we're just talking the big schools, the Power Five.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
If nobody beats you, you should be playing for a champion. And I don't care about all the other stuff. Now, if there were 5 of them that were undefeated, that'd be a different issue.
Who would be the 4th team that you would put in?
You put Florida State in over Alabama?
Texas. Oh, absolutely.
You would put Texas because they beat.
Texas Alabama gets bumped.
And I understand the politics says you have to have the SEC in there. I understand politics. I understand all that other stuff, money. But that's not the question. I'm a football coach.
Yep.
Right? Michigan is in there, an undefeated champion. Washington is in there, an undefeated champion. Florida State should be in there, an undefeated champion. And the best one-loss team between Texas and Alabama is Texas because they beat them on the field.
Because they beat Bama head-to-head. Yep.
Now,
totally
am I sure that Texas won't win the national championship? No. But who earned their way in has to be the deciding factor. Not who's the prettiest. Not who's
when Alabama goes to win the national championship, it's going to throw all that.
All I'm saying is, hey,
if I'm at Florida State in '97, we coached against Michigan. They won the national championship. And reality is they tied Nebraska because they're both undefeated. If I'm at Florida State and we go 14-0 and win a bowl game, then I'm buying those kids national championship rings.
Hey, didn't UCF did it a couple years ago, right? Central Florida did it a couple years ago when they won, and you know what I mean. I think they had the quarterback that year. I forget his name. Was a stud. That he went and bought them rings. Hey guys, it's all good. You know what I mean? It's the same thing back when the BCS used to.
And this has
computer determined it.
And this has more traction because I don't know that UCF at the time they weren't in the Big 12, right? They were in a smaller league, and I get that. Right. There's no history at all of Central Florida, Cincinnati, Hawaii when they had that great year and played in the Super Bowl. Boise State. There's no history of those guys being able to be national champions. So I could see leaving Central Florida out. But Florida State's been a national champion. They've
Peter
done
Warwick,
this.
Chris
The
Winkie.
ACC has won national championship. Clemson won national championship. Miami won national championship. So to eliminate them undefeated,
Right,
because your eyes tell you something,
right,
it's
because
not
they're
a
playing
beauty
with
pageant.
a third string quarterback.
But the second string quarterback is going to play in the championship game.
Right, he was in concussion
Here's
protocol.
the thing that's the most ridiculous of all. This is to me, this shouldn't even be an argument because there should be, and you coached at FCS, so you know, there should be a regular playoff that solves all this. And now your argument is whether this 2-loss team should be in over this 1-loss team for the playoff.
And
Mike Leach said it best years ago before he passed away.
Right.
There's going to be 12 next year, and it solves
Thank
the problem.
God.
Solves
And
the
it's still
problem.
going to be a problem because then it's who's 13 and who's 14.
But at least it's a 2-loss versus a 1-loss type of thing.
The one issue that nobody wants to talk about is with all the money that's in the bowl games, the bowl game people that put on the games donate their profits. They're all nonprofits, right? So if you go to Liberty Bowl, all that money is going to local charities after the game. When you eliminate some of these bowls, you're hurting the Danny Thomas Hospital, the St. Jude's Cancer Research for Kids. They get a big lump sum of money from the Liberty Bowl game. If we eliminate some of these bowl games, nobody wants to talk about the fact that we're hurting communities. These communities make money, and the money goes to charities, and that's why there are so many bowl games. It's not that we have to see the weeding, pulling, eating game.
Boca
It's the
Raton.
fact of what they're doing with it. Those kids are going visiting hospitals where kids have cancer. They're doing community service work when they're at the bowl games. The bowl games are important in these communities, and you can't just eliminate them because of the mighty dollar. So whatever you want to do to get to 12, I'm fine with. I don't care how many football games you play, but don't lose what's good for the communities along the way. And nobody wants to talk about that because nobody understands the value of the bowl game.
Well, are they still going to use the bowls for those 12? Like,
it just won't be the same as
like
what you're
the
saying,
Cotton
right?
Bowl.
They haven't decided how they're going to do it yet.
Okay.
Right? If they take the
hopefully each one of those games
buys,
they do the same thing for.
That's right. If they take the 4 buys and the first round of 4 games for the other 8 is the 4 New Year's Day games, right?
Right.
And the last one is the Rose Bowl, and you could keep that together, I'm good.
Yeah.
But it still de-emphasizes the Liberty Bowl, the Gator
Bowl.
I
agree with that. Yeah.
And
the Boca Raton Bowl.
You're hurting communities every time you do that.
That's a great point, Coach. And I
never realized that. I never realized that.
I don't think a lot of people know that.
No, I didn't know that.
Well, they don't talk about it because they're going to do it to them, and they don't want to give the argument to the other side.
Right.
The other thing nobody wants to talk about, and it's a fascinating thing. I was involved in the business part of football for a long, long time, and I understand business. Is if you lower the number of games because you want to add in more playoff games, it sounds like it's not a big deal until you're one of the teams that's making $1 million on a home game and you lose a home game.
That's a good point.
Right. And those communities, right? You own the Howard Johnsons or the Best Western or whatever it is. And you're used to having 6 or 7 home dates that fill your place for 2 or 3 nights.
Yeah, you're counting
every restaurant in those towns. You're talking about Ames, Iowa, and Bloomington, Indiana, where I was, but you can go through 1,000 of them. There's hundreds of these communities.
You see that side of it, though, Coach.
Well, they all live
in that.
They
you know
all
what I'm saying?
live.
Like a lot of these people they have no clue about that. That is just, they don't know that every home
they
game
all live off those 60 or 70,000 people coming in for those weekends.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful about eliminating things and knowing what it does to the communities that we service.
So that's an interesting point, because if your team is mathematically eliminated from being the one of the 12, I guess, does that bring down your attendance too?
If it does, you're not just hurting the game,
right?
You're hurting the communities. As you overvalue these final 12 teams, are you undervaluing what the other games all bring?
Right. I agree with that. That's true.
We can't let ourselves fall into that trap as a community, as a football community. We have to say, young fella, don't pass up on the bowl game. If you have a chance to go play in the Gator Bowl or the Peach Bowl or you pick one, it doesn't matter. Let's make those important, and we'll need those. Let's not give away.
So Caleb Williams isn't playing in the bowl game.
Well, that's the other part too. That's been a trend now, right? Is like these guys are now going. I mean,
my team doesn't have a chance.
Like,
my
hey,
team doesn't have a chance. I'm done.
Guys, you're all good. Good luck. Bam, I'm out.
I understand both sides, right? You're going to go in the draft, and you can't afford to get hurt. Don't give me the draft prep stuff. It's 14 practices. You're not going to run a faster 40-yard dash in April because you missed 14 days. That's malarkey. All you're saying is my personal well-being, my future is more important than the team. And I just struggle with it. I'm just old, and I would sacrifice for the team. And I would say the small chance of getting hurt, plus you got to remember, they all have an insurance policy. They're going to make $1 million if they get hurt. Right. None of them are going broke. That's just not true. I coached guys that had those NCAA insurance policies. If they got hurt in their 5th year, if they got hurt in a bowl game, they were covered. But I've also stood there in a room with a guy who said, hey, I'm not playing the second half. It's just not worth the risk in the middle of a bowl game. And I love the guy, and I would do anything in the world for him. I just disagree with the act. I could disagree with what you do without hating you. Unfortunately, in our world, people don't think like that very often.
Right.
If they disagree with your religion or your politics, they hate you as a person.
Of course.
I could disagree with Caleb Williams not playing with his team in the bowl game. They earned a bowl game. It's important to those people. There are guys on that team that this is going to be the highlight of their lives.
They'll never play football again.
This ring matters to them.
What happened to loyal? Like, I don't understand how they don't have loyalty to their friends.
They're not friends.
Well, because he transfers, maybe because he's a transfer. So are they really his friends? I mean,
then here's the other part. Like, all right, you're coming in here, you're
when
doing
you play
all this
college
stuff,
football,
and you're that guy. What are you giving back to us, dude? You're just using us.
Listen, when you play college football, and I played, you don't make your friends on Saturday afternoon at 1.
Correct.
You make your friends Tuesday and Wednesday morning at 6 a.m.
Yep.
In winter conditioning. You make your friends Saturday night from 9 to 3 after a big win.
Yep.
You make your friends off the field.
Right.
And
that's the greatness of playing college football.
And when you're transferring and you bring 60 new guys into Colorado,
where's that?
You don't have that. Right?
You
just don't. And when you talk about we're going to do it again, we're going to get all new linemen. What about the guy that's sitting at his locker thinking, I'm trying my best, I'm doing my best.
I'm the next guy, like next year's my year.
Or I'm going to have to find a new place to go because they want someone taller.
Right. They don't want me anymore.
If we as lawmakers, rule makers in this case, don't protect these kids some, there's a big push. Kids want to be unionized, be employees. You know what you could do to an employee? You could
fire them.
And nobody wants to tell these kids, as soon as you step on that line and you're getting paid by the hour or by the job, as soon as you roll an ankle, I'm firing your butt and getting a new one. Just like I would if I worked at UPS. You can't do the job, I get a better guy. So
and the problem, and then there's another 90 guys waiting to take that guy's spot.
And I don't think they should be unionized, and I don't think they should be paid by the job. If you want to have NIL, God bless you. If you want to do an advertisement and make money for it, I'm okay.
You want to go sign a jersey or something.
But you can't let them transfer without penalty, and you really can't let them get fired for no reason. In the old days, if you weren't good enough, they ran you off by trying to just wear you out at practice.
Yeah, right, just grind you to the death.
And we protected those kids by saying, if you're hurt, you keep your scholarship no matter what.
You don't have to play.
You get your education. And now we're to the point where we're going to let kids get fired at Colorado. I don't want to use them as the only example, but we're going to let you come in and run kids off and take kids' scholarships away because they can go into a transfer portal. And if those kids did nothing wrong and they're good students and they follow the rules and they do what they're supposed to do, why are they being penalized?
Is this sustainable? Like that's my thing. So yesterday there was I can't remember the exact number. It was 600 something FBS players went in. There was over
966 this morning.
Oh, really? And there was over 400 yesterday FCS players that went in.
They're trying to go.
At 9 o'clock this morning, there were 966 in the portal.
And those FCS guys are
players.
That's
their best
that's
players.
Day one. That's
I mean, think about it, Coach. You're at Bryant. You just have a receiver go off over 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns, and he's
gone.
got a year
He's gone.
left, and all of a sudden, Coach,
he's gone.
I have offers already from.
I've seen it with the Ivy League kids. The Ivy League kids.
Well,
they have great years.
University of South Carolina playing with a kid at left tackle from here. And he's getting run around and beat to death. They beat the
Florida State. The Florida State, the best D lineman for Florida State.
It's Albany kid. I understand. In the old days, you could transfer down a level so you could have a chance to play if that's what you wanted to do.
Correct, because you didn't have to sit, right?
Lorenzo Perry was a Hall of Fame running back, and he led the nation in rushing. And he was a UMass kid who came back to us. He was from Rhode Island. His friends were playing for us. So, I understand there have to be some opportunities for kids, but they have to benefit the kids.
Right.
And to be able to fire kids without doing anything wrong, there have to be more parameters on the thought than this. When Congress decided a couple of years ago that it's the Wild West, there wasn't enough thought put into what is it going to do to the average kid who's trying to get an education, is going to go be an accountant, going to go have what is
I'm
this
trying
called again? A webcast?
Yeah,
if this kid wants to go have a podcast and be like Dave and Derek, how does he get his communications degree if you're going to cut him because he's not fast enough? It's just
don't they lose credits too? Like so,
if you transfer, some schools don't take certain schools. Like Bryant, I believe, was a private school, right? So same with me at Sacred Heart. So when I transferred from Sacred Heart back to Montclair State College, there was religion classes I took at Sacred Heart. They sure as hell weren't taking them at Montclair State.
That's right.
So I lost a couple credits here or there. Easy to make up as an athlete because our academic advisors, hey, we can fit this to this criteria or this to that. But you do lose some credits if you're going back and forth.
If the reason to have colleges is to graduate kids, then the transfer thing doesn't help that. It's not designed to help that, right? It's just a short term. It's the gold that glitters. It might not be the best, but it's the one right in front of you. Yeah, it's a shame.
It's really the shiny tinsel, man. It's what gets you clicks. It's all of that now type of thing. Right. Where what are we really doing?
That's right. It's like the football players are like the cat around the Christmas tree. All they can see is the tinsel. Right?
And I really question me. The question is now. It's like you look at all these guys that are now. All right, I'm doing this to go here. I'm doing. Hey, buddy, like, where's your degree from? Like, this is still part of the process. Like,
it's not.
Oh, you have 1 year left. Like, I already graduated from Monmouth, right? Monmouth has one of the best receivers. He's now leaving. Had 300 yards in a game this year. Like, phenomenal kid. Now he's going to, 1 year left. I'm in the transfer portal to go somewhere. Okay.
See, we had a great receiver. We had a great receiver at Bryant, Jordan Harris. He was a terrific player. He was out of position in high school. He was the best player on the team, so they put him at tailback. But he needed to play wide receiver, and he was offensive player of the year in the league we were in, and he had a bunch of yards against Albany and Monmouth and all those guys. He was a terrific player, but he probably wasn't an NFL player for a couple of different athletic reasons. You know what I'm saying? I'm not picking on the kid at all. He's one of my all-time favorite kids.
It's what it is.
And if he had the chance, right? I don't think all my guys would have just left me. I think we developed loyalty, but
Marquise wasn't leaving.
He was one that big schools would have come for. He was tall enough and fast enough. And his career would not have been the same.
Right.
He ended up the leading receiver, and he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's already in the Hall of Fame at a college, and he got into pro camps. But he also got his degree, and he's married with kids, and he's having a great life. That his life would not have been as good if the shiny tinsel was out there. And so I'm just not a proponent. I think there should be circumstances where you can transfer, but I don't think it should be what it is today. And no one's going to change my mind on that.
I think also what's kind of unusual is the kids coming from really good schools like Duke. The Duke quarterback transferred because his coach left.
Yeah.
But just even the thought process to me. I mean, this is just to me. Like, if you go to graduate from Duke, even if you play in the NFL for, let's say, a handful
of years, have your degree from Duke.
You graduate from Duke, like, you're going to be able to take that and use the relationships you have from that in a whole different realm. You know, same thing with Ivy League. Same thing. Even if you go to Lehigh, Lafayette, trade up Lehigh, Lafayette. And this is not saying that state schools aren't good schools, but trading up your Lehigh, Lafayette degree and leaving that and going to, I don't know, Western Michigan. No offense to Western Michigan, but I'm just saying it's just.
But what happens is go graduate from Western Michigan with 1 year.
Yes.
And you don't have the depth of friendship that you have after 4 years at any of the schools you're talking about. And even if you might play in front of 10,000 more people or a couple of games on ESPN, in the end, you've given up all the loyalty, the friendships, the bonds that you built that
sold out,
last a lifetime.
Yep, right? You sold out.
Last year, I had a health scare, right? I had some health issues. I'm old. Guys that texted me were guys I played with in college, guys that called, guys that, did stuff when you have your first kid, when you have your grandkid, when you bury your wife, unfortunately, when you have a health issue. Those friendships you develop in that locker room last forever.
And those are the ones that call you when you really need it.
And they're not valued anymore because I could go transfer for a year and it's not where I'm from. And, that we have lost the intangibles for the tangible. And that's hard to measure, but it's a shame.
It's the baseball minor league system within the college environment.
That's free. It's NFL free agency now in college.
Well, there's a lot of the NFL that goes into college football, not just at the highest level.
NFL's different because I was an agent for 6 years. The NFL has parameters. So there's parameters. There's a draft. That's
what I think this is the worst part is because they jumped into this and it's like, oh, this looks great on paper.
Major League Baseball is a better analogy because you can. There's no cap on what you can do in Major League Baseball. So minor league, you could trade a player. You could sell a player to another team in the minor leagues. You could do those kind of things, and a player can jump around and move up in the system. That's what happens in Major League Baseball.
David, the best thing you said in that, again, I agree with just about everything you say today, is that there are parameters, right? We created something with no rules and no parameters.
There's nothing.
The way the NFL is the same as college football is if you're at a 1AA school, you have a number of scholarships, but in reality, you could take those 63 scholarships and break them into 85 kids.
Yep.
Right.
So what you have is a salary pool, right? So the 63 scholarships, if each one was $10,000, let's just say the value of it, right? You have 63, $630,000, $6.3 million, whatever it is, and you get to divide that up how you want, right? I need 18 offensive linemen. I need 3 kickers. I need whatever it is. And that is greatly similar to what the NFL has because it's a pool of money for a certain number of spots. 63 scholarships for 85 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Division II, it's 26 scholarships, can be divided among 85 kids. And so that pool of money is, I would sit down with an NFL general manager, and I did it with a bunch of them. The best was Ozzie Newsome with the Ravens. I was fortunate enough to be able to sit with Ozzie.
He set the staple.
Ozzie's the best, right? So I would sit with him and I'd say, well, how much money are you going to give to your left guard, right? If you have a hard cap on how much, and he said, well, it's a little different because we have guys we have to pay because they're going to get what's coming on the open market. And we didn't have that, right? When he has Marshall Yand at right guard's not a position they value very high, but you had such a good player and a Pro Bowl player that you had to pay him. You had to pay him the going rate. And that skewed how much they could pay some other people. Well, in 1AA football,
now you got to take from over here to make this work.
Right. In 1AA football, it's very similar. How many quarterbacks can you really put on scholarship based on the salary? How much money can you give them? In the history of the last 29 years, I believe it is. I might not get this stat right, but I think I have it. In the last 29 years, only 3 quarterbacks have gotten 12% or more of the salary cap and won a Super Bowl. So the 1AA football is very similar to that. How much money do I allocate to a position and still have enough money to make the other positions good enough and deep enough?
Yep.
So that's the way it's the same. Different from Division I football, where it's 85 scholarships that can't be broken up. Now you combine it with NIL, though, and you're back to having a salary that you have to divide amongst your good players.
Your PWOs now are scholarship guys because they're getting NIL.
Yes, and plus TV. So with TV, everything comes back to this money with TV, right? So
SEC just left CBS, right, to go to ESPN for $1 billion or something.
Well, the haves and have-nots of NIL. So who are the 6 teams that we were arguing about here? Michigan, Alabama, Texas, Georgia, Florida State, Washington. Okay, Washington maybe isn't. I mean, they're the haves financially, but maybe they haven't been always an all-the-time power. But 5 of the 6 all-the-time power. Like throughout the history of
they
football,
they are the blue bloods of football.
Right. So
they're the Mount Rushmore.
TV. This is my opinion, but TV wants, and Ohio State would be another one, right? And so on and so forth. But TV wants those guys in the top tier of it.
Yeah,
so
they want them in the Rose Bowl.
It's tiering it financially.
That's what the cynic would say is Alabama in because the SEC is part of ESPN.
Agreed. I agree with that, actually. I do agree with that.
Right. And then the whole thing about Herb Street, they changed it. They knew before they came out because he changed the helmets in the background of the top.
Oh, really? Did he? I didn't know that.
Oh, dude.
I didn't know that.
Poor Herb Street just traveling with his dog. Like, come on, man. Guys.
Yeah, I would hate to think that the TV people decided that 13-0 Florida State shouldn't be in because of a TV contract with the SEC.
Right.
You just hope that that's not really the case.
Oh, I pray that's not.
But it's like James Bond. We don't really know what goes on.
No one's gonna know.
No. But then again, it does look rather enticing to see a Georgia Florida State game, right? As one of those. They're not the top 4, but hey, maybe they did them a favor by doing that, right? Maybe they're gonna get so much press from not being in that it would be the equivalent of not being in.
Yeah.
But
I don't think they view it as a favor.
Put me in the
Then
game.
they'd be a silver lining, Derek, but it's not a favor.
Oh, absolutely not. Put me in that. If I'm on Florida State right now, the best thing I can do, put my head down, go to work, and go blow out Georgia.
It's like the proctologist. You might bring them candy and flowers, but it's not the same as a date.
Nah.
It's just there's a difference. There may be a silver lining.
I'm writing that one down.
Not a favor.
That's what I'm writing down.
Coach,
that's good.
Awesome, Coach.
Coach, it's been awesome having you on. It really has. It's been a great discussion. Now, what are you post football? You're in Myrtle Beach. What does your days consist of before we let you go?
Oh, I'm an old guy who just putters around. I find things to do. I'm tutoring some kids in football. I do some lessons on the Zoom with quarterbacks around the country that are trying to learn how to slide protections. Where's the pressure coming from so they don't get surprised? And so I help some kids still. I help some coaches. I have weekly calls with some guys who, just want to bounce ideas off somebody who did it for a long time.
Hell yeah.
So I keep my hand in a little bit. My experience isn't valued. They want young guys that look pretty in the camera and want to win the press conference, which is a shame. I still feel like I could go help some people.
Hell yeah.
But, I have like I said before, nobody's been more blessed than me. I've had a great life. The retirement is great. I live in a beautiful place. It's warm. I'm in gym shorts every day, year round. So life could be a lot worse.
That's awesome. Coach, thanks for coming on. We're definitely going to have you on. I think we maybe have to have you on after this whole entire thing shakes out, after the end of the portal and the end of the national championship, and discuss how this all shook out.
My pleasure, man. I enjoy you guys. I always have, and I wish you guys nothing but the best. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Coach, man.
Thanks, Coach. Have a great day.
Thanks, buddy.
You too.
That was fantastic discussion.
Still got a lot of juice, man.
I'm curious. Did Coach Fine break our record? Hour 23. Yep. Is that's?
Oh, hell yeah.
Who is?
Well, listen. You know what's funny? The other longest one also resides in Myrtle Beach, and Coach Mike Siri retired from.
He was the other. He was the other
one. Those. If we put a call on with those two, bro, we talk. They think people.
We don't have to talk
a lot.
We don't have to talk.
We would just. Here, go ahead, boys. I knew it.
I could go get myself a coffee. Come back.
I'll tell you
the whole discussion will be going.
Because I coached at a camp. I coached camps that he ran.
Right? OD, right?
OD camps, yeah. And the one we did at Bryant, right? Marquise Watson was there. He played for him, right? Mm-hmm. But it was just to see how he, even when they had nothing to do with Bryant football, right? He was just using the facility for this camp and all that kind of stuff. To see how he interacted, like he said, coffee with, the maintenance guy, right? Or, going into the cafeteria workers. He's just that kind of guy that was like a shake hand, how you doing? I'm Marty type of interaction. It wasn't I'm the head football coach. I mean, it was and listen, he's always been a great kind of mentor. I could always call him, text him, bounce ideas off him. And he's, quick to come back. Got a lot of experience. Like I said, I mean, just beyond the Bryants. I mean, come on, dude. Seneca Wallace, Antoine Randall. I mean, you're telling me, and this is what really, you saw the juice he just gave you. You're telling me you can't bring him in as a line coach somewhere at a high level and still do and get, you know what I mean? Like, it's the way of the world now.
Well, the question also is, I think this balance goes, do you want – I think he could go somewhere. I just think the question is, I'm going to coach this way. This is how I coach.
And I'm not changing.
I'm not going to change. So the question becomes, like, not actually – I'm sure they would want to bring him on. The question is, it could be hard.
Right. Well, it's like what we say all the time, right? Like, hey, if the guys that coached us coached today, they'd be in jail.
I mean, I think he would just adjust, but
of course.
But does he want to? Like,
who wants to do that? Who wants to be told you can't coach the way you or you got to tweak this or change?
I mean, he's a great coach. He could change any style into any style
absolutely.
he wants.
He can adapt to whatever it is and go and then still coach at a high level. So
absolutely,
I'm really glad we got to talk to him. He's a great guy.
Great guy, yes. I remember so much from all the years, and I
love that he was like, "Hey man,
I saw you." I don't know how he remembers that, but I do remember. It's funny because, going back to like my own recruiting, it's I hate to say this, but it's so long ago, like and every coach
30 years ago,
coach came through. Whether they wanted me or they didn't want me back then, they all came to Saddlebrook to talk with my coach. So, some guys said, some guys didn't view me as a scholar, but every school, I mean, literally almost every school in the country, at least east of the Mississippi. So, but it's so hard. Like, you forget that all these guys, and coaching is a thing that keeps going round and round, right? So I personally remember him from the years at Bryant very well because I was coaching then. I was coaching then. So I remember,
he was recruiting guys.
I remember that the most, but it's so interesting how the whole process works. We talk about Monmouth, like Callahan.
He's now the longest tenured coach in Division I football.
So when he recruited me, he was at Colgate, I believe. Okay, and I'm telling you, he was like, his son. You know how he's young guy. He was like his son. He was a young guy. So it's pretty I'm trying to think, was he Colgate or was he Lafayette now? I can't remember. He was one of those. But I remember him, like, them offering me, and they wanted me to come there, and it's wild that, like, so many years later you're like, wow, he's still coaching. So but that was great. And we said
and Thursday morning we got another one, Coach Sadlock.
Yeah, yes, which the record could be in jeopardy there. We'll find out. So
if we get him talking about wing T, bro, it might be over.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna go to it because I
also, like, he's enticing to me because years of success at a small Group I program, Cedar Grove, then gets, whatever the situation was, he goes now and he coaches at St. Peter's for a couple years, which now you see the transition of, holy shit, like, we're going from Group I to big time, parochial football, right? And then he spent, he finished his last 2 years at Bloomfield, which is a Group 5 public, so just to hear what he feels about the whole, and then obviously, a wing T guy and all that kind of stuff, I think it'll be definitely.
He's still in the game because he does all those wing T clinics and stuff. So
they do, yes. Now with
so
Coach
retired.
No, he's retired from on the field. He's done
on the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's let it roll.